Hello, hello, hello. It's showtime, y'all. If you can find your seats, if you're attending the event, that'd be perfect.
No, because I'm going to sit right here.
There's a review in the last Sunday, and it seems
Okay. So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Greenlight Bookstore. I'm Micah Thomas, and I'll be your host today. We're excited to host tonight's event with Carlene Bauer, presenting her new book, Girls They Write Songs About. She'll be talking to Darcy Steinke, so you're in for an excellent event. Before I turn things over to them, just a couple housekeeping things. Please turn off or silence your cell phones. Masks are to be worn the whole evening. Signed books are for sale at the register. Recording is available on YouTube if everything goes as planned. And the store closes at 9 p.m. So we're gonna have so much fun, but the fun has to end up in Greenlight at 9 p.m. Our interviewer for this evening is Darcy Steinke, who is the author of the memoir Easter Everywhere and 5 novels, Sister Golden Hair, Milk, Jesus Saves, Suicide Blonde, and Up Through the Water. Her books have been translated into 10 languages and her nonfiction has appeared widely. She has taught at the New School, Columbia University School of Arts, New York University, Princeton, and the American University of Paris. She lives with her husband in Brooklyn. Darcy will be speaking with our featured author, Carlene Bauer, who is the author of a memoir, Not That Kind of Girl, and the novel Frances and Bernard. Her work has been published in the Los Angeles Review of Books, Virginia Quarterly Review, N+1, the New York Times Book Review, and Elle. She lives in Brooklyn. Her new book, Girls They Write Songs About, is a thrumming and searching story about the bonds that shape us more than any love affair. In this power ballad, The Female Friendship, Bauer renders a moving and thoughtful story of how desire and ambition change over time and what it takes to carve out a path and lives of one's own. So you're in for something really special tonight. Carlene will be reading from her book, then Darcy will join her in conversation, and you'll have a chance to ask questions after that. So please join me in welcoming to the stage Carlene and Darcy.
So I guess I'll start. I'll tell you a little bit more about the book. It's just, it begins in the late 90s, which basically now is 1898 in New York. And it tells the story of a friendship, and it trails them from their 20s into their early 40s. And it's about New York, and where dreams go to die, in a way. So it's about more than that. So I'm going to read a little bit from the book. This is the first few pages. Rose and I moved to New York to be motherless. We moved to New York to want undisturbed and unchecked. And what did we want? We wanted to be seen as an overpoweringly singular instance of late 20th century womanhood. We wanted fan mail. We wanted to be worshipped. We wanted lives full of purpose and free of regret. True daughters of the second wave, we were counting on work to get us there. We thought that if we worked hard enough, we would one day, and on time, stand exactly where we hoped. But we were neither selfish enough nor selfless enough to become heroines. And even though she and I are no longer speaking, it makes me happy to think and write of that we. Once, on my 26th birthday, we ran out on the bill at a very expensive restaurant. When I realized that our waiter's shift had finished and our table in the corner had been forgotten in the Friday night frenzy, I said, let's make a run for it. And we stood up from our chairs and walked out. All the while looking at all the handsome, burnished people with money, looking at them if they were rings in a jewelry case, as if they were lives or faces we might buy for ourselves one day, realizing that maturity, too, was its own, forgive me, its own kind of money, and yet still feeling reckless and regal because we were free and no one could buy us. Another time, the two of us, riding the Staten Island ferry for no other reason than it was unseasonably warm in March, meeting two elderly women with winking eyes and fanny packs, one with a cane and one wearing a sun visor, who said, as we sped away from Manhattan, white waves pounding behind us, waves as white as their hair, you two must be sisters the way you're laughing. One night, at a friend's bewilderingly ostentatious wedding, we charmed the bartender into giving us each a bottle of Veuve Clicquot as revenge on such ostentation, and we ran out of there with coats flying behind us. Coats we bought for $15 each on the street in the West Village, cast-offs from the lives of long-dead old ladies, clutching those green bottles to our chests as we hopped into a cab. New York. Getaway cars everywhere, whenever you need one. On yet another night, summer, at a birthday party, we danced ourselves into cramps so painful, we walked barefoot out onto the sidewalk, shoes crammed into our handbags, and hobbled 1 block to a Duane Reade, where we bought flip-flops, and then hobbled another 5 blocks to the subway. Let's get old in exactly this way, I said, as we clutched at each other's arms and crept toward the entrance to the R train. Rose and I, true daughters of Long Island and New Jersey, loved a diner. It was democracy in action. We were sitting in a booth at the Red Flame, a diner we loved on 44th Street, a diner that's still around, and a family of French tourists who had been sitting a few tables away from us, wearing trimmed-down jackets, eating what looked to be shrimp scampi, sent a bottle of white wine over because they'd heard us arguing over Godard. Rose was trying to tell me why I shouldn't hate him, and I was trying to explain why his misogyny didn't bother me. You could have those kinds of conversations back then. We drank the whole bottle with our grilled cheese and tomato sandwiches and declared that we'd had way worse at book parties. When the red flame goes out, Rose used to say, we're leaving New York. One night we left work too late to see a band in the East Village, and I remember Rose saying, well, we missed it. We missed U2 at Red Rocks, we missed Billie Holiday at the Blue Note, Napoleon, Sid Vicious, Martin Luther King, Muhammad Ali, Moses, May of '68 and July of 1789. We missed it, all of it. I had to sit down on the sidewalk on Avenue B. I was laughing so hard. I think of that all the time. We missed it, all of it. When Rose and I moved to the city, living in Brooklyn meant you had to commute to Manhattan in order to have a good time. Tokens were still the only currency accepted by the subway. The New York Times printed their photos in black and white, and there was no such thing as the style section. Coffee cost less than $1. You could smoke in bars. Tower Records still stood at the corner of Broadway and 4th Street. The most important machines that worked were telephones, Xerox machines, faxes, computers, and printers. If you needed to temp, you could still sign up, like your grandmother did, with a Kelly Girl service, and some of the Midtown offices they sent me to had IBM Selectrics sitting out on the desk like old horses, nodding off in their stalls, and I can still hear the warm hum they radiated between words, and the clicking of the cylinders as you pulled the paper up and out of them. The Strand was a dump. Other places were dumps. Dumps or near dumps, like McHale's and the Subway Inn and Rudy's and the Holiday Cocktail Lounge. But the Strand stands out at the moment because I was in there the other day marveling again at the heaps of merch that now greet its guests and contrasting that place with the one that used to smell of dust and the funk of its unwashed cashiers. We drank at night in dumps, ate in near dumps, sat in vinyl booths patched with duct tape, pistons sprawled out paint peeling, rust-watered bathrooms. Nobody minded or cared. That's how you knew you were not in the suburbs. Everyone has their own New York, and this was ours.
That was so good. Okay, so I'm thrilled to be here. I'm so happy that we're having like live events again. And I just like, it's very exciting to see people in public, right? Like, it's very exciting, yeah. But I just love this novel so much. The idea of coming to New York, coming to be a writer, coming to be a female writer in New York, the struggle that is, and I really identified with it. I myself came in the 90s, and I wrote for The Village Voice, I wrote for Spin, you know, so like, I almost had a nosebleed with identification. Like, I was just like, oh my God, like, wow.
My work here is done then.
Yeah, it was really fantastic for me, like, and it was very moving. So, but, okay, so I have many questions, but the first one is, I was really interested in how, and I have found this myself, because I'm a writer, of course, as well, how writing itself is sort of a character, like the idea of the drama of writing, and I mean, particularly coming to New York, trying to break into these, and you know, at this time in the late 90s and like the 2000s, it was really kind of like a hipster boys game, like it was hard for us, right? Like, so I thought maybe you could talk about the idea of like coming to New York and trying to write, and how that's, I was very fascinated how that itself is very dramatic in the novel, you know?
I worried that people would shrug and say, what's the problem here? Because writing about writing is, I mean, in a way, like inherently it could be boring, right? So it means a lot to me that it came off as somehow
It's very dramatic.
and dramatic because, I mean, so, but I think it's funny, like thinking about coming here in the 90s, I came in the late 90s and, you know, worked for magazines and like tried to write for magazines and published books. And at the time, like I knew there was this sort of, what's the word I want to say? Like I knew that men had the advantage. It was almost like it didn't, you know, in a way it didn't bother me until later. Like I just, it didn't become, I mean, maybe this says more about, maybe I should stop talking.
Well, we weren't used to, this is the thing, I have a 25-year-old and it's like hard to explain, like you just were used to a lower bar, you know, so you kind of were used to it. I mean, sadly,
there were pockets where you felt taken seriously by enough, I'm not even telling the truth. If there were pockets where you get seriously taken by men enough so that you felt like, oh, this isn't a problem, but there would be a switching in and out of that, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't want to over-dramatize this, but you...
Well, there's, I mean, you know, a lot of people have problems, right? Of course, yeah.
It took me a while to realize that the deck was stacked in some way. And then, like, well, I don't want to... The deck was stacked also insofar as, you know, if you went to an Ivy League college, then there was like another, like...
Yeah, I love that too, like, 'cause I also, like, come from, like, not a very fancy family, went to a shitty college, but, like, we kind of took New York by storm. Like, Carlene, I was going to say it, like, we worked our asses off, and I was like, it was really exciting to read because I'm like, yeah, we did do that. And you kind of forget, like, you really, like, I mean, of course we have privilege, of course, but we didn't have as much privilege as a lot of other, you know, like, in our world, right? Like,
I had an editor who, the woman who edited, I know, the woman who edited my book, my second book I published in England, and she came over for a visit, and she was talking, and she came from a working class British family, immigrant too, and she said, you know, we're the kids they never saw coming, and I remember saying she and her husband felt that way.
And that's in the book, I really love that,
yes, that's right, I forgot.
Yeah, and we also come from the period where, like, I mean, I can remember, like, I wrote for Spin, and I remember I had done a cover story for, you know, for Nirvana's, like, In Utero, very exciting for me. And I remember going to get the tickets because they were about to play, so I went back to the office to get the tickets. And there was some guy there, and I could say his name, but I'm not going to. And he said to me, like, how'd you get that gig? And I was just like, fuck you, man. I got that gig by writing about Waco, and it was like, and my story was taken over in like 10 European, you know, Sunday magazines. That's how I got that gig, you know. Actually, but there was still that in the air then. Like, it's important to remember that people felt like our colleagues, like our male colleagues felt okay saying that at that time. And it was hard.
It's true.
Yeah.
I think also, I'm just trying to think of different ways that played out. But I think, I'm trying to think of other books that are about writing that, or just actually, I've had a conversation with my editor over the last long time, I guess, like books about work.
Right,
like how to make work dramatic. And I watched a lot of Mad Men again, for various reasons, but the way that show makes work seem like a Wagnerian opera, and so workplace drama to me is my pornography, because work is where you go to, I mean, we have to go, many of us have to go to a workplace. Right. And that's where all your issues come out when they're not coming out in your romantic relationships. Not less so your friendships. They will out in a workplace. I mean, so it's,
But I really appreciate that. Actually, the idea that work itself and like writing what you're going to write, like where you're going to write, that became like very dramatic. And
torturous.
Well, very torturous, but also like, you know, it's an important part of a writer's life, you know. So like I thought that was like really beautiful. To the other part of this question is, this first question is the idea of coming to New York and sort of bonding with New York, which I find that to be, you know, I think New York, you know, you kind of need a boyfriend, but do you? Because New York is so fucking amazing. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, so like you can like date New York basically, and New York like never really lets you down that much. Like, you know, I mean.
Then you get older.
I don't know. Well,
I think you get
but you can still walk in Prospect. You can still walk in Prospect Park. You know what I mean? Like, there's like still like endless ways that you can relate. Yes, totally. So I felt that in this book too, which I don't think you know, there are other books about New York, of course, but I felt that really strongly too, like a woman's like starting to bond with New York. And I just had this happen where, you know, I have a little like cottage upstate, and it's very hard for me to go to it lately. Like I kind of just want to stay in New York. And my friend said to me, well, you know, your relationship like with New York like needs tending. It's like a very important city. And I thought like there's a real truth to that, you know. I felt that in the book. I felt her like bonding with New York was part of her becoming an adult, you know.
I think that is true. I feel that, I mean, it's all the things that people say about it. Like it's a bad, I mean, sometimes you can describe it as a bad boyfriend, it's a cliche, like,
right.
Or a cruel mistress, or, but I think that I have gone sour on it. Like I think, you know, I go sour on it, but I'm here, but I also know that it is God with capital G, so I'm in, like, that's the relationship we're in. Like, not that I owe it things, it does not owe me anything. It is giving me things on sufferance. Like it's
I hear
and
that.
I
I hear that. Yeah, yeah.
I've been here for 25 years, except for 9 months. In San Francisco, sorry.
Yeah.
And we should go there.
It's okay to cheat a little. You know what I mean? Like,
A long time ago, someone said to me, "You should probably get out of here." And I said, "What? Like how?"
Yeah.
I don't know if it's in the book, maybe in an earlier draft, but I had this idea that if you left New York, it would give your spot to someone else. Like the rents would go up like 5,000%. Like all the available men would dry up. Like it really would. Like, oh, you don't like me? Okay, fine. Someone else, there are like 5,000 people waiting to get in here before I get back.
Yeah,
And that's
scary.
actually
It's a
not
scary
true.
thought.
And I learned that too late in life. I could have left. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you know, it's good. I mean, maybe it's like it's good to sort of tease New York a little. Maybe, yeah. All right. All right. So the center of the book, besides writing and bonding with New York City, like is this like relationship with Rose, who's another. So Charlotte, you bonds with her, like another like female writer, and I was really struck with how sort of romantic the relationship was, and also how much they really seemed to need each other, like as they moved into the writing world of New York. I thought you could speak to that a little bit.
well, I think, and I don't want to gender essentialize, but there seems to me a way in which female friendship, I guess I should look at you all, sorry, it helps me to not look at you. So
Okay. Yeah.
sorry. But I think that there's a way in which female friendship, you need to pair up with someone, you need a mirror and an anchor. You want to, for me, but I also think this, I've seen this other ways, like it's good to have a female partner with which to dream with, or at least it was for me. But I found enough partners that it must just not be true for me. Like how necessary it was to have someone with the same ambition, so you didn't feel crazy in your own, maybe. And I was always lucky to have friends who, I never really, although I'm sure there are people here who could fact check this for me if I don't lie, but we weren't competitive. We wanted the best for each other, and so I feel very, very lucky to have found women who wanted that dyad, as Ella Montgomery might have said.
Yeah.
But I think it may be hard, and it may be hard for women to want by themselves, and I think, at least for me, and I'm embarrassed that I feel like maybe a little bit, but I think women who know how to stand alone and what they want without a friend by their side, like I don't know who they are, but I don't want to meet them because they would anyway. But I think that maybe there's something helpful about having your ambition, your desire, your want reflected back to you, and someone you can talk over these things with, like, did I hear right? Did I see right? What do you think I should do? So I think that maybe that answers the question.
Yeah, no, it's a very beautiful part of the book. So I wanted to talk a little bit about feminism. And I was interested in how, this is like a really good book. Like if you haven't read it, like you have to, because it's like, it engages with all these thorny issues in ways that are just so real. You know what I mean? It's really good. But the idea of it seems very, like what I liked about it is it seemed very alive to like, what should a woman do? Like there are all these choices, like what, like actually not like, oh, I'm gonna be a writer and that's the right way, but like, Rose kind of takes a different path. And so the idea of like what are our best choices and what does it mean for us as women and feminists? And also, I really love how Charlotte is slowly realizing that, you know, she wants to live a life like pretty much completely on her own terms, which is pretty rare for a woman, you know. And I mean it's very rare, and it's very like what I loved about the book is like when you make that decision as a woman, it's very messy, and you're very frank about that, like, right?
I gotta go. Oh, I'm sorry.
sorry. But no, but I thought that we could talk about this idea of like I felt like feminism was not necessarily heroic in the book, but was also like moving and meaningful.
No, that is I guess that's what I intended to do, and what I don't even, this may not even answer your question, but it's occurred to me, like, you know, the last couple of years, like, I don't even know whether young people would, I shouldn't even say this out loud, whether young people would call me a feminist, like, if they knew what I felt or thought. I also think that I was, you know, I think maybe I and others misunderstood feminism in some way. We thought it meant some things and not others, and I think that, I think that, you know, I have critiques, and I guess I tried to sneak them into the book, but I also, you know, I wouldn't be, I hate to sound, this isn't so obvious, like I wouldn't be here without the ideology, the ideas, the writing, the movement, but I think that, I'm sorry.
It's hard. Maybe I didn't even ask a question, I'm not sure. I mean, the idea, I guess the idea is like, what is feminism to you? Let's just start with that.
Yeah,
and in this book, you know what I mean? Like when you were dealing with the idea of like her as a narrator, like how are you like sort of, yeah, okay.
So like one of the things, this may not answer it directly, but I was thinking like, so, you know, I was born in 1973, like the two women who have the friendship in the book, like they're born in 1973, and so you inherited a set of ideas about like, which are like, you can do anything. Like I'm thinking of a friend who, like her mother used to tell her every day, you can be president, and like my mother didn't tell me that, she told me other things, but like you had this, like, you could just do anything, and so I guess one of the things that I was interested in writing about, and I hope I did it somewhat successfully, is like watching my friends, like we had all been indoctrinated, and I know that's a bad word, like we had gone to college, we had, you know, intuitively felt like feminists, the text we were given like resonated with us, and so we wanted to be free. However, you know, like I don't want to bore anybody, like whatever that, we thought we should be free. Like we didn't want to answer to men, we didn't want men telling us what to do, we wanted to be able to do whatever we wanted to do with our bodies. But the older we got, I saw how we were not free. And that was really interesting to me because, wait a minute, like weren't we given all the handbooks? Like I thought, like didn't we say to ourselves and others that we would never do X, Y, and Z? And why, and we seem to, I don't want to say over and over again, but I will for argument's sake, like over and over again, tying ourselves down and happily, you know, mostly happily, like nobody, you know, houses or children, and which to me, like I have neither, and I would look at that and think, what was the problem? So I think that just watching us choose to not be as free as we thought we would, and like, no one, and people might talk like, what am I doing? But it wasn't like an operatic sort of like, I'm trying to think like a 70s film where somebody was like, what am I doing? Or it would be like a horror movie aspect of realization. But I think that, you know, I think every generation, I mean, there's actually like, there's a book by Malcolm Cooley, who was a critic in the 20s, and I forget the name of the book, which is so embarrassing, but he wrote about this generation of bohemians in the 20s, like packing it up and moving to, you know, New Jersey. And so it seems like as long as there's been a Bohemia, to the extent that I can say I'm a member of it, people are always going to hit a wall where they say, you know what, I actually just want a house, like forget the novel, like I'm done here, like forget free love. And so it's not a new thing that like I ran into or we run into. I think it must be something that has to do with the trajectory of choosing to be I came from the 80s, and like non-jock, like non, you know, or non, it must be something that like choosing something other than money and property. That you think you're doing that, and the older you get, you find that you are choosing those things, and I don't know. I'm gonna say.
But I think this is the core. I'm gonna jump a question actually, because I actually think, because this is what's at the core of the novel, which like really fascinated me, which is that, I mean, Rose and and Charlotte like choose different things, right? Like, you know, there's like, and it's in range of things that women choose, like, you know, marriage, children, and Charlotte kind of sticks to a sort of ideal of writing and self-development. And I mean, I hear what you're saying in a way, but I also think that, like, the choices you make have to do with your core concerns. So it's not just like, oh, why didn't I get a house? It's like, no, I want these bigger fucking things for myself. And I think you should stand behind that a little more, actually. You know what I mean, Carlene? Like I think that's like, you know what I mean? I think that's like great. Like, you know what I mean? That like choices are made that aren't maybe based on like stability and capitalism but they're based on things that, like, you know, are meaningful, like, you know, to your soul and your core and what it means to be a human on the planet. Like, you know what I mean? It's very important.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think you gotta get behind this a little more. I mean, you've written this incredibly inspirational book, you know? Like, with all the messiness. Yeah. Okay, so I just want to, like, play that out there. Okay. All right, so let's get back, like, more to the messiness. Okay, so, because there's all these, like, really great thorny issues. I can see how your editor might have been like, what? She's got a crush on her boss? How are we gonna, like, how is that gonna work? Like, how is that gonna work in the current, you know, world? Like, I was like, oh my gosh. Okay, but so Carl, like, very sexy boss, which we had in those days. I mean, sometimes we didn't have I mean, like, you know, Bob Gochoni Jr. at Spin was not a sexy boss. Yeah, like, he was not, like, he didn't want to go into his office. Yeah. But there were some that were like, yeah. And so, but I was really, but, you know, when workplace romance was more like, okay, like, it wasn't like, oh, yeah, it was completely different than it is now. And, like, what was happening? Were we being taken advantage of? I mean, the whole thing is kind of confusing now. But what I really liked about Carl in the book is it really reminded me how early attractions and early crushes, like even if they don't reach fruition, and they often don't, but the hold they have on you, like the hold they really have on you, like and I have, believe me, I have my own, like, these too, like, even if, and you know, in this book it's great because like I'm not going to say what happens, but something happens where there is sort of something, you know, comes to sort of a, you know, there is some sort of, you know, reckoning, but I like the relationships that actually you don't commit to can have not more, but I mean, it's that stupid, like, Marguerite Duras idea, which I've always hated. I'm like, don't tell me that, like, one night of love is gonna, like, fuck me up for my life, you know, but there is something to it, right? Okay, but in the book, it's cool. Like I thought Carl was really like amazing in that, like, they don't have that much connection. I mean, there's another part of it too, which I don't know if it happens still, but in our generation, there was a lot of, like, I don't know, this is gonna be weird to say, but there were these men and you liked them and you seemed to be equal to them, but then they would marry women that were like personal assistants. And you were like, what is going on here? Like, why? Like, why do you want to marry a personal assistant? You know what I mean? Like, why? Like, you could actually have, like, a real human, you know what I mean? Not that women are cool who want to, like, be in that position, but, like, okay, sorry.
No.
I probably went on too long. Okay, yeah.
It's something that I meant to address in the book and did not fully know. I forgot about all that.
Yeah.
That is, I think with my first book, the assistant that was working on it, which was a memoir, and so there was like a true crime, I'm joking, but there was like a true crime crush that happened, by which I mean, like, I had a crush on a guy, and he would toy with me. Someone in here knows what I'm talking about. And the assistant said, oh my God, she said, that guy? She's like, oh, the love that is not love. And I thought, Sarah, I used to know her name, Sarah Wickensalken.
Yeah.
She's not here. But
wow.
But and so I think about that all the time, so she said it better than I did, like those things where, especially, I mean, I sense they happen still between adults, but I think especially when you're young, like, you're working, like, you get these sort of push-pull relationships with people where you're young enough that you don't mind, that they're not really, like, giving you everything you need, and they like you, but they're not, like, really in it, but you're both doing this dance, and I guess it sounds so French, but like the dance itself is pleasurable. So I think that can really, work will deliver these people. And you're a young person, you're going around New York, you're like, I think that also, maybe it's the doing that when you're young is also really valuable. And it's also, in my mind, these relationships, and maybe in a sense, they are with your intellect. If you're in that relationship, you are intellectual. I mean, to me, it's the pull of having someone value you intellectually. Also other ways, maybe. So that is a very heady cocktail. I mean, if these are straight, I don't want to speak for cisgendered ladies, that would be, getting into a relationship where they not only value for your mind, but also other things. Anyway, but I think that, and I think in the book, like, her boss, I mean, they're all basically 12. Like, they're all the same age, so I guess in my mind, because I worked at a magazine like that where everybody seemed like 18, and there were no adults, and we were poor. So that, it seemed like we were all in a romper room more than anyway. Sorry.
No, I think that's good. I mean, Carl, it's interesting to me when Carl comes back into the story, because he's just as, like, can't make up his mind and wants everything as he always did, which I liked. Because it was very anti-heroic. I mean, that's what I like about your book. It's very anti-heroic. Like, it makes, I love things that are anti-heroic because life is not that heroic if you, like, noticed,
Yeah.
And, like, a lot of books are like, it's heroic. I'm like, not really. Like, not really at all, basically.
But I didn't want to be a stone cold bummer either. So I tried to, like, reflect reality.
Of course.
But not that you're asking for that. And I feel like sometimes when you write things that aren't dour, people are like, are you really writing literature? Get with the program. And then I always feel like, but wait, hold on, George Eliot, like, she wasn't, but now I'm just, it's a commercial for my own, anyway. But that's my own problem.
But the idea, actually, let's go into the idea a little bit more. So the idea that you're saying is that you can have both.
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, they used to.
Right, yeah.
Or
You
that's
have both.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can work out like very serious like problems, but also have something that seems like hopeful.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are thousands of people doing it here, and I just haven't read the book. If anybody wants to correct me, like,
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. All right. So no, wait. Actually, we're gonna move up. We have a few more. So as the novel comes to a close, I really loved, and this is like based on the same like question in a way, but the sort of messiness of adult life. There's abortion, there's like adultery, there's loneliness, there's sadness in it. But the idea that writing and taking yourself seriously can be sort of a point of solace and all that was very beautiful. And like, I kind of wondered if you would read, like actually 306, just the bottom of that there. I think it's like so beautiful. Yeah, exactly. Well, that's another thing we can talk about. Yeah, because we can talk about your other books and religion and how there's really no religion in this. Okay, so 306, from If I Stop to Think. Just read that, like nice and slowly and beautifully. Okay.
Okay, now it's sorry, my contacts.
It's okay.
If I stop to think about that shouldn't we?
No, that's good.
Yeah.
Go.
If I stop to think about that for too long, I'd want to go outside without a mask. I should describe. So the character's living in San Francisco, and the wildfires, I mean, this actually happened, like the wildfire smoke from outside San Francisco was covering the city, and she couldn't go outside without a mask, but she didn't have a mask. Okay, so if I stop to think about that for too long, I'd want to go outside without a mask and use that air like it was Sylvia Plath's oven. So I typed quickly, sloppily, first thought, best thought, typed maniacally a little to outrace my regrets. What did I want? To respect my solitude. It could be soil, not sand, to forgive myself for my mistakes.
I just love that. I have to say I wrote that in my journal. Yes, it's so good. I mean, but it's so hard. I feel like the whole book is about actually trying to respect your solitude in a way, and the idea of, it's so hard to forgive yourself, like, for your mistakes, and like to realize like you made them because you thought that was the thing to do at the time. But I think the idea though, like, 'cause the book is about writing and about work, and so the idea that respecting the solitude that's necessary to do the work, and how, like, I mean, I still have this now. It's like, even, I'm a writer, you know, it's like, but I still have trouble, like, I mean, I carve out, like, time for myself, but it's still kind of tricky for me, and I just think it's just very beautiful. Like, I find this part, like, extremely beautiful. Actually, the idea that what she wants, like what Charlotte wants, it is not that different than the things she wanted when the book started, but she also understands its value better now.
Well, it's funny that when I wrote that, I'm like, did she? Like, I feel like it's
Yeah.
it came off that.
Yeah, she understands the value of that solitude and what it means to her and how it's at the center of her life.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, it's not exactly related, but it was making me think. I often have thought, like, should I just be a nun so I can have a sanctioned
Yeah.
removal
Solitude.
from
But
society?
nuns are so, I don't know if you know any nuns, they're so busy.
No.
Because they have to answer the phone, they have to do this. They're not really, I mean, I know, I have nun friends, and they also have to fight for their solitude. Yeah.
Well, I guess maybe I also thought, like, you'd get to be alone, but then they would also, like, they would shame you into doing good work. So you'd be like, what, God, so many of my problems would be
Right.
solved, but I know that's not true. But also being an anchorite over the pandemic,
Uh-huh.
you know, I thought, I could have been Julian of Norwich,
Yeah.
no problem. So an anchorite is someone who,
Yeah, go ahead, go for it.
So I'm
yeah.
sure we all know, but in case you don't, so an anchoress or an anchorite, they were in the Middle Ages chiefly, they were people who they could be nuns or monks, but often they were just lay people who were moved by faith to live alone, apart from society, being in communion with God, and they would have little cells that would be off the church, and they would have a little tiny window through which you could see into the church, so you could see mass or communion being given. Please correct me. And then another little window where you could talk to passerby, and you know, if people wanted to ask you a question, you could have a cat in the cell. I've learned. Also, sometimes there's you could get flirted with through the cell, and that could be a problem. But you know, so I got into like learning about. There's not really much to learn, but I got into thinking about this, and also just one last thing about. A long time ago, I was talking to a friend who was saying the same thing like 5,000 years ago. Like, I think I should be a nun, and that's like a thought I've returned to when like everything's in shambles. Like I should just be a nun. Like, and so I was saying this to him. He's like, he was Catholic, or he said, "Oh, it's nun time, isn't it?"
It's kind of like Miller time. Is that what you're saying?
Nun time. Yeah, it is.
It's nun
Who
time.
else did you know that was like
Yeah.
this happened? So
Well, let's go there, because this book, I mean, your other books, I just read, which I loved, you know, Francis and Bernard, which there's a lot of religion in that, and I know, of course, you come from like a religious background, just like myself, and I wondered about, in this book, I sort of was looking for the religious sensibility, and like, and I wondered about the relationship between your earlier books and this book, and that, I guess I myself as a writer am always look, I don't know, I have such a conflicted, I'm sure you do too, but like very conflicted toward faith, like how much should I talk about it, how much should I not, how much should I try to like jump over it and do like this kind of secular faith that everyone likes a lot more than actually Christian faith. Yeah, a lot more. So I wondered about your thinking about that. Clearly you're drawn to these topics and like, but the relationship between these books and you like your earlier books in this book, maybe?
I guess like it was freeing in a way. I mean, not that I'm always thinking about religion. But it was maybe freeing. I mean, it was freeing not to have to deal with that, and also like it. I wondered sometimes whether I feel weird saying myself out, but like whether the other books, like maybe they worked against them if they did have religion. But you know.
What do you mean by that?
No, like who cares, or like I really don't care, or like people have their like
Like
what does it
people
have to
just
do with me?
don't like religion.
They
Yeah.
don't like religion, or
Yeah.
aren't interested in it, or so I think I enjoyed maybe in some way like if people.
But writing is kind of like a religion. I mean, you do it every day. I mean, my main nun friend, who was my spiritual director, like I used to always say to her, "Oh, my writing life, my prayer life," and she'd be like, "No, it's the same. I don't want to hear this anymore. Like I want to hear like your like when you sit down to write, you're in the same place, you know, like, yeah.
Well, I do think of Simone Weil, which I believe you.
Of course, yes, I do indeed, yeah.
Who was well, I guess we now call her a mystic, but she was a philosopher who lived in the early 40s, French. And she talks a lot about how attention paid to anything is prayer. And so I get, with any kind of art you make, any kind of conversation you have, any kind of attention paid to anything that's not you, or that is you, writing, like attention, just the sustained active focus is a form of prayer, and I think about that all the time. And I hope that if someone reads because I sometimes hope that if people do read this book and they don't know I'm religious, they feel like, I bet that girl was a Christian. But that's just my own private thing, because this is reminding me of something else that James Wood, who's one of the literary critics at the New Yorker, he's British, but he was evangelical, and I'm not going to get the quote right, but he talks about how once, like, having been evangelical or religious, like, everything must be that serious for the rest of your life.
Right, yeah, Charles Marsh talks about it, yeah.
So the idea of, and when I heard that, like, a friend of mine told me, oh my God, like, he's right, like, everything has got to be life or death, like, and even though I wasn't a particularly fanatic religious kid, like, there is something. Like,
that's so interesting.
What are we doing here?
Yeah, because it's like I always tell my students, like the difference between a good song and a bad song is just the angle of intent. Like a bad love song, like, it's just the way you. But it's kind of true. Like a religious upbringing, there's a lot of, like, problems with it, but, like, the stakes are friggin' high. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And so the fact that you bring that to everything you do.
Well,
yeah.
That may not be so great.
Yeah. Okay, amazing. Okay, actually, should we do some questions? Do people have questions? That would be amazing.
Or not.
No, you just have to wait them out. They eventually will. When you teach, I'm sure you know that, like, you have to eventually wait and see. No? Yes, very good. Yes, see, there we go. Yeah.
Okay. So I read your book already, and one thing that really struck me was this sort of how all the women seem to descend, whether they're related or not, and they all seem to form this community, whether they know they're in it or not, where they support each other, but they don't even know they're supporting each other. Would you speak a little bit about that?
I think you gave my book more credit than it deserved. but I guess I can't approve of that. I think relationships with women, bosses, friends, sisters, aunts, mothers, cousins. I have lived a life, I've either sought it out or been given a life it was filled with a lot of women, and women professors, how could I forget? So I think it's just, I couldn't help it. Like, I couldn't help putting that in the book, that kind of relationship. But if I could quote you, I think can I, or maybe not, no. I think it just naturally flowed out of me, which is a very boring answer to your excellent question.
There's a question in the back.
Jason?
Yeah.
Yes. So I haven't read the book yet, but I've known Carlene for a long time and reading her brilliant writing for a long time. And I also came to New York, in the same period, and was a writer. And to me, that version of myself seems so long ago. And seems like a different person. There's parts of it that I'm embarrassed by, parts I'm proud of, but a lot of it I don't honestly remember. And so I'm just curious if you could talk a little bit about how you accessed that world, which is so different, and you're both the world and yourself in that period when you started the book.
Well, if I say I have a good memory, I'm not trying to brag. Like, now it's like torn to bits. Like, but anyway, at the time, like, mostly when I started it, like, I had pretty good powers of recall, I guess, for that stuff. But it is true. Like, after writing it, and I don't know if you've experienced this, or anybody who's written, like, it's almost like the book, and I can't be the only person who said it, the book becomes your memory, and you lose those memories. It's sort of like I've noticed this happening with, like, I put the memory in the book, and now I don't have it anymore. I didn't mean for that to happen, but it seems to be happening. And but it is true that I do feel like a different, almost like that was a child. I mean, literally, like that was a child. And if I think about the people that, like, we all showed up on the shores of New York, like one day in 1990, whatever. And not to do a Ken Burns documentary, but I think that, you know, what was I? I'm sorry, I have a reverie. But I think that we all were that way. Like, we were all just bumping into things, and we were all kids. And I would sometimes have this thought, like, where are the adults? I sort of say to people, like, where are the adults? Like, isn't anybody gonna, like, come downstairs and tell us to knock off? Like, they never did. Like, you'd ask your older friends for advice, and they would say some things, but they would maybe give you the credit of being able to make decisions for yourself. So I think I now have no memory of it. That's actually not true. But also just being young, like those things just naturally just stay in your mind, as I think Vashti Bunyan sings. But
I also think when we came, because I came in '89, I think like the dive bars, like where are the dive bars now? It's confusing. But also like, I actually felt like, oh no, like, you know, no more danceteria, no more, like you were kind of in the wake of something that had happened.
Right.
Like, you know, like you felt like, oh no, well you could still go to CBGBs, but it was like, no, but you were in the wake of some, like you were sort of like, oh, this was cool then, but we were in like a gap where it seemed like,
I knew that when I got here.
like we had to wait a long time before the Strokes came, you know what I mean? It was just like,
even then.
well, even then, yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah, but I think it was a different feel. Like I have a 25-year-old, and she's having her very cool young New York like life, and it seems very exciting. She's in film, but I don't think she has that feeling like everything already happened.
Right.
Which I mean, I was happy to be here and do things, but there was a feeling of like maybe it was respect for elders. I don't know, but there was a feeling of like all this stuff had happened, and you were like lucky just to like grab the very last like little like coattails, you know.
That's what I felt in 1997. Like I got here, I was like, well, everything's happened.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens here. Because
Right.
if Blondie's got whatever. Like my sister, she used to joke. We would talk about things that are no longer here, and she used to say, "This used to be my playground," like quoting that. When I think about that, I walk by something. This used to be. That's actually not. But I do. I mean, no, it's just. By the time I got here in the late 90s, I'm just repeating myself. Like they're really like I was just glad to be here in New York.
Yeah, me too.
And you know, and truth be told, like I was glad that, and I always knew like if this were less safe, I don't know if I'd be here.
Yeah, I know. I love your.
About that right now.
Yeah, I really like your ideas in the book too about. I actually marked all of them about like being a little grumpy about New York getting safe and like nice. Like you were like.
I worry about how to talk about that because I know that
it's hard.
Yeah, and you don't want to look like, well, there are so many ways you could look bad.
Totally.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's just better to.
Yeah.
I'm glad this place is here. You know. Like,
yeah. It's tricky. Please.
So, you and I have shared so many experiences here that this was not a joy to me. Oh, sorry, that's it. So, my name is Sarah, and meant so much to me because of all the things that we shared together. But maybe if we could talk a little bit about, which I think this neighborhood in particular, things that resonated or that time, and did it find itself in the book like I think it did?
Yes. I mean,
would you feel like you can elaborate on that?
Well, yeah.
You lived in this neighborhood.
I didn't. I lived in Carson, which before, I mean, like I didn't know it was going to be. But it's not my fault. But really is. But I put a lot of that stuff in the beginning of the book, I would say. And then, you know, trying to remember what it was like, and then thought like, well, I can't linger here too long because, again, like it's not becoming. All those ideas you have about what it's like to be nostalgic, to lament the loss, to, I mean. So I think you have to be careful when you go over what's no longer there.
I agree.
So,
It's a tricky time.
But I think about it all the time and how to write about, how to preserve the memory without outing yourself as a reactionary. Like there's no good way. I mean, there must be, but
Yeah.
but I'm not as industrious as a nun.
Yeah. And also New York's always changing. I mean, I think that's the thing about New York is it's like, I mean, gentrification can be a terrible thing, but neighborhoods are constantly turning over and changing with different, I mean, my neighborhood where I lived was Jewish, and then it was like Caribbean American, and now there's more mixed, and there's like Hispanic people, and that's the kind of flow of that energy is part of what makes New York so exciting.
And Devilman's.
What's that?
Oh, it's a bar and a hotel.
Oh.
It's got,
Oh, I've been there, of course. Yeah. It's very.
The guy that did the Madeleines.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, there are still those things. It's true.
But I am still cranky.
Yeah.
But,
I see a question here.
Hi, my love. Hi, Carlene. So I knew Carlene while she was writing this book. I think I met you when you were starting this or in the process of it. And I just enjoyed this whole night. And I was wondering if you had like a turning point at all during the writing of it. Like, did you know going in, like did you have one idea like going in and then like come out of it at a different place? And is there anything you want to share about that? Because I just think I'm so excited to read it, and I just want to hear more of your process.
I intended it to be a different style, I think, than it ended up being. I think, and there were other people who had bigger parts in the book that now are minimized. They're still there. And so I think that and I worked a lot with my editors at the casino to figure out just how to make the story stronger. And so that was a process. I think that and maybe I thought it was going to end differently, but not too differently. I don't think this is a very dynamic answer to your question, sorry. But yeah, I think I intended it to be a little more like Virginia Woolf gauzy, like a little bit, and it still has moments of that, but that's not, and it's not too far from that, but I think in my mind it was going to be, I don't know, sorry.
No, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, I should get a better, I'll work on that. Sorry that we workshopped that answer together.
That's amazing.
So it's Carrie, hi. So it seems like the book is in some ways like a dialogue between like a much older self and so I'm curious if there are any answers to, are there things that that self told your current self that was useful for you to know, and also the other way around, things your current self really wished you could have told the old self?
Oh, well, I think that I'm glad that I was writing this book at the age, you can see youth more clearly. I mean, these are obvious things, like I could see, the mistakes that you make when you're young clear enough to hopefully make something dramatically compelling out of them. And I think that maybe you're forcing me to think about it. I don't know, like maybe the younger self, their old self. Like, I don't know, it turned out so bad. I remember I don't want to name drop, but I interviewed Liz Phair once now it's a long time ago, but anyway. But I said, is there anything that, the Liz Phair Exile in Guyville would say to this must have been like 15 years ago, and she said, yeah. She'd say, why isn't there more money? And but at the same time, it was like, fair enough, like, why isn't there more money? I love that she said it, because she wasn't even pretending to care about, art for art. She went art for art's sake and the cash. And I thought, that's kind of why I've loved you all along. But that is a way of not talking about me and talking about somebody else. But I think, I think I'm going to end with Liz Phair. We're done.
Yeah. All right. Okay, thank you so much. It was amazing, and like it's very inspirational.